Hi guys, it's the Gin and Tonic Show. It's Friday. It is the 7th of September 2018. And I want to welcome everybody on all the continents, wherever you may be, morning, evening, late night, whatever the case may be. We've got a special guest on today, which is Armin Navabi. I am going to say just a couple of words and then I will let him do the talking. Armin is and I'm very proud of myself. I did some homework. Founder of Atheist Republic. If I'm wrong, just correct me, please, Armin. And you are very active in ex-Muslims of North America. You wrote the book, Why There Is No God. I wonder where you get that idea from. And you even have your own page on Wikipedia. Your social media accounts are closed with alarming regularity, closing down free speech and using the coward's only weapon, censorship. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. People don't have courage or arguments, and if that is the case, they can only bully others into silence, thinking that by removing the speaker, they're removing the speech, which is totally untrue. And you, Armin, you put your finger in it, and then you start twisting, which I welcome very much. You have put out videos like Allah is gay, like in Happy, and these videos go viral because you are somebody who dares do this where others say, nope, that's a little bit too hot for me. And your latest contribution, I enjoyed very much. It was actually, you didn't do much. You just got kicked out of a Starbucks conference. So what part do you enjoy most? Do you most enjoy the part where you antagonize others, where you are niggling others, where you are putting your finger in the wound, or where you are simply being activist, showing what these stupid people are doing? What do you enjoy most?
Well, I don't enjoy making people. I do not enjoy making people upset. The point is not to, make people uncomfortable or offended. The problem is that them being offended should not give them the authority or the legitimacy to come and silence us. When Muslims usually have a very common example that they give when you say something that is offensive, and they want to make it clear to you why you shouldn't be saying these things when it hurts a lot of people. And the examples that they usually give is the example that their favorite example is like, what would it be good if I come make fun of your mother? I think mother, sister, daughter, wife, these are the most sensitive targets for them. This is why a lot of the threats I get is usually not even directed at me. It's usually directed at female members of my family, or people I love, like wife, mother, or daughter that I don't have, or the sister I don't have. So it's very interesting that their threats is towards that, but also the nicer ones where they want the nicer Muslims that want to come and talk to me and tell me why I shouldn't be doing this. They also mention, what if I made fun of your mother? What if I draw a cartoon of your wife? Would you be okay with that? And why are you trying to offend a whole bunch of people? And I'm like, listen, if I was trying to offend Muslims or offend any religious person for the sake of offending them, then I'm a sadist. I'm not a very nice person. I'm an asshole. If I'm making fun of your mom for no other reason than to piss you off, then I'm not a very pleasant person to be with. And if you ask me like, hey, can you please stop that? And this is making me upset. If I do anything that is upsetting you, and you just say, can you please stop that? This is not very comfortable to me. And I might be like, yeah, sure, I'll stop. The thing is that I tell them, your analogy is not a very good one, and I'll change it a little bit to show you what a better analogy would be. Let's take the mother example, right? And I say, like, let's change this story a little bit. What if your mom was a politician and she was in a position of authority, and she was passing laws and making rules that affected a lot of people. Would you still be opposed to us mocking her positions and or making fun of her ideas or what she has to say? Let's take it a step further. What if she tried to make it illegal? What if she was trying to ban making fun of her? She was passing laws that made it a crime for anybody to make a joke about her. I would say that in that situation, then it would not only it's okay to make fun of her. I think we have to. It would be a duty. It would be like we have to go and make fun of her in mass. So to make sure that that law either doesn't get passed or it backfires, to signal to other people that whenever you try to do something like this, it's never going to work. And you know, the side the fact that she's your mom and this is making you upset, that was not the intention. That was just the side product, and it's an unfortunate side product, but the intention is to make it clear that you can't do this to us. You can't. It needs to backfire, so to signal to other people that whenever you try to limit freedom of expression, what you are going to do instead is you're going to amplify it, because if they're successful, they're never going to be satisfied. You know, it's never going to be like, oh, okay, we won, let's stop. Right? Whenever you give ground to people that they can being offended or being upset about something puts them in a position to silence people. Whenever you give them a little bit, they will want more. They will say, okay, this is working, let's see what else we can silence, let's see what other views we can promote in favor of others without getting any competition to it, because the competition just makes us upset. I mean, the Dry Muhammad cartoon annual event was a very effective way of responding to the protests against Drawing Muhammad. Now, if you look at it, there's not that much, many Muslims have become desensitized to it. It's not a big deal anymore to draw Muhammad as much. I mean, it still is, but not as much as before, because the reaction to it was so massive, right? So, and another thing is that a lot of people saying that mention that this upsets them, we have to remind them that, listen, we are not coming to you with these messages, right? You are coming to us. You are finding us. Salman Rushdie had a really good quote saying that if you, I'm paraphrasing, he was saying that if you ever find a book very offensive, the only thing you have to do is not read it, right? So if you say, like, if I write a book and you find it offensive, I'm passing my book to you, and you're like, no, I find it offensive, sorry. I'm like, okay, that's okay, and I won't. Then you don't read it. I'll give it to someone else, right? But there, you get offended. You're allowed to be offended by it, and I'm okay with you not reading it, right? If you don't want to, that's a. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be offended." No, it's okay to be offended, right? The problem is when you're offended and you think I should stop saying something because you're offended. If you're offended by something, that means I shouldn't be forcing my content on you. I shouldn't be forcing my views on you. You should have every opportunity to opt out of listening to me or viewing my content or seeing my content. But as long as I'm doing it on my own platform, in my own environment, in a public environment, in places where you could easily opt out of seeing, in environments where you have to actually willingly participate to be able to see my content. If I'm doing that, then it's not up to me to censor myself. It's up to you to control the content that you're exposed to. If anybody is forcing a content on you, then I'm all on your side. I will say, like, no, you can't do this to people. You have to, people have to be able to choose what they see and what they don't see. I mean, I advise them to expose themselves to ideas they disagree with, but at the end of the day, it's their choice. If I go to a church or if I just barge in someone's living room while they're eating dinner and tell them that there is no God, you're all been lied to, they have every right to call the cops and kick me out of their own platform, right? But if I'm doing it on my own website, on my own book, on my own pages, then you either are looking for this content, that's why you're exposed to it, or you're really shitty at managing your feed. And you know, every time somebody is like offended, I sometimes send them a video. Here's how you block me. Here's how you can control what you see on your feed. If you really still suck at it, maybe just don't come on Facebook. It's easy. Yeah. But anyway,
I have a short question. This is from the chat, because while you were talking, I was showing the video with Allah is happy, and somebody is asking, why did you do that?
Well, there's many reasons. First of all, to show that we kind of knew the reactions that we're going to get, right? And it's one thing to say homophobia is so common in the Islamic world. It's another thing to show it, right? Because to be offended by the word Allah is gay is for you to say that the word gay is offensive, and the word gay should not be offensive, right? So the reaction that we got makes it clear to people that homophobia is so common in the Muslim community, and it's something that needs to be addressing. It's not, you know, some people, you could show people statistics, you could show people you know, data and experts talking about what a big problem is, but sometimes people need to actually see the reactions that you get from something like that to be convinced of, like, yeah, okay, this is really a big problem. Another thing is to normalize taboos that are not harmful, right? Saying Allah is gay doesn't harm anybody, but this is seen as something so offensive to people, and we want to make sure something so harmful, something that should disgusting, and we don't think there's anything disgusting about the word gay, and we're trying to normalize blasphemy, we're trying to normalize dissent, we're trying to normalize people seeing things that are immoral for no other reason other than the fact that they disagree with it, like saying those things. Like, this is just a, you know, how just a sign with a few words on it, and if you think this is so wrong, then it means more of us should come out with signs like this, because there's nothing wrong with being gay. Like, how could you find this offensive unless you have a problem with the word gay? So normalizing this and normalizing taboos that shouldn't be taboos is the second reason. The third reason is to send a signal to people, ex-Muslims in very religious Islamic countries, because I saw some tweets, Persian tweets, linking to the video, which is exactly what I wanted to see, which I was happy to see. It was to show, because to a lot of people, to a lot of non-religious, atheist, secularists, people in Islamic countries, having a sign that says Allah and gay and walking in public with it is completely unimaginable. So, and to see that there are places in the world that you could do that, is I was hoping that is as an inspiration, that could show you that look how far some countries have come. Like, to somebody in Canada, they might not think it's a big deal that this is not a crime to have a sign that says Allah is gay, but for some people, that's a huge sign of how progress. That how free can a country be that you could go out in public with a sign like that, and you're not gonna go to jail for it, right? And you know, based on the reaction I saw that some people were inspired by that. Like some people were asking, can this really happen one day in our country, that even with a sign this offensive, you're not going to get jailed for it.
Yeah. Where was that, Armin? Where did
that was Iran, because
no, the video.
The video.
The video was Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Vancouver, Canada.
But I mean, now the question is there a reason, number 4, that it was just a publicity stunt?
Is a new reason number 4 a publicity stunt? Define a publicity stunt.
Something to propagate your name and your person and what you stand for.
Well, if that's to advertise what we stand for. Well, if that's what, if that's what the definition is, then yes. Isn't that what everybody does? Isn't that what your YouTube channel is for? Isn't that what anybody that writes a book or makes a Facebook account, or any activist, isn't that what everybody, isn't the whole point of sending out a message is to get it in front of as many eyeballs as you possibly can? Aren't you, by becoming an activist and telling people about your activism, aren't you trying to get more people to notice your activism so you can make a difference? I mean, I don't understand. Like people are like, oh, you're just trying to get attention. Like, yeah. So has every single other person that has wrote a book or opened a YouTube channel or a Facebook page. Is it like isn't that the entire point? Like, how could you make any difference if you don't get people's attention? I don't understand that criticism.
Okay, if you look at the word homophobia, and why so religious is actually making a point. Homophobic and not liking homosexuals is actually something very different. But if you look at words like that, if you look at homophobic, if you look at Islamophobic, what do you think of these terms?
Well, some of them make sense, some of them don't. I mean, I think many people have already have responded to the term why Islamophobic is such a ridiculous claim. I think I think your audience might already be familiar with why it's such a ridiculous claim. I think it would be a much more useful term if it was either Muslim phobia or anti-Muslim bigotry, because we don't deny the fact that anti-Muslim bigotry exists and it's a real thing, right? And that it needs to be challenged. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Islamophobia makes no sense. It's ideas being challenged is the right thing to do. Like, actually, it's interesting because I was talking to this Muslim woman one time in Chicago, and she told me that this was really good. I was on camera. I'm hoping the people that were recorded it one day get released it. But she's told me when I was interviewing her, and she was in full hijab and everything. She's like, "Hey, I have Christian friends. I disagree with them. I tell them that what I disagree with in Christianity with them. I criticize their views. We get along. Just because I'm telling them what I don't like about Christianity doesn't make me a Christian phobe, right? Christianity phobe. So why would people attacking Islam make them Islamophobic?" And that was so great. I'm hoping that gets better but yeah, I mean, I think this has been addressed so much by what a ridiculous term the word Islamophobia is.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? And yet there's people who propagate it all the time now. It's their favorite thing. We have people on Facebook. Stops and I regularly entertain some of these people on Facebook who keep saying this.
Right.
I think it's a defense mechanism as well.
Yes.
There's a big victim mentality among some, not all, but some Muslims. Hey, we're the persecuted. You guys Islamophobe, poor us.
Right. I mean, and it shows how. I mean, it's very strategic if you think about it, because. And I don't think, like, when I say strategic, I think memes sometimes have these strategic defense mechanisms, not because some people decided it, it's just because it survived, because it has these defense mechanisms. But the fact that it doesn't have logic to back it up suggests that it needs other ways to protect itself. And in countries where you could make blasphemy illegal, that's the defense mechanism. But in countries that you can't, then being offended and making things too sacred to attack, too sacred, too holy to talk about, that would be the wall that you build around it, because you don't have a wall built out of logic to build around it. So that's the only tool to use.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the start? Okay, before we go, I mean, we've got just now we had 48 people watching, and we've got almost more dislikes than likes. Can anybody who's watching please give me a thumbs up? Come on, guys.
I don't know if people that's giving you dislikes know how YouTube algorithms work, because that actually helps your channel. The more YouTube doesn't care about, YouTube just cares about the fact that they're engaging, and yeah.
Don't tell them. Let them do the dislikes.
Okay, everybody hit the dislike.
Stop before you do the Starbucks. Can I just bring this up, and maybe Armin could just talk about this, because we talk about this every so often, and obviously Armin's in the thick of it like many other ex-Muslims, and I wanted to just bring this up and share this so that people can see this. Why am I sharing?
Oh yeah, I got so many. I have hundreds of these. I just shared the funniest ones.
I don't know if you can see this, guys. I'll try and zoom in a bit here.
Do you want this bigger? I've got this as a...
Have you? I mean, I can make it bigger here so people can see it. Here it is. I'll just read some of this, and then you can talk about this. So this is obviously somebody that responded to you. If you were in front of me, I'll surely kill you by the most miserable death ever because you're a fucking video. But Allah will do justice and you'll be rotten in hellfire. You're a fucking pig. Lictomomi or whatever that means. Your mom is a fucking bitch. You will be killed before giving birth to a cunt like you.
She should have been. You should have been.
You should have been killed, yes. And you quite politely responded, why does making this video deserve such a punishment? You insulted our God, big angry face. How does that hurt anyone? And why do you think gay is an insult? It's our God and you insulted him. It hurts all Muslims. Next time, think twice.
Oh, he's just...
Your idea went out. Oh, now you're back. Are you back?
Did you hear it? Oh, sorry.
Okay. So next time, you were saying next time and your audio got cut out. Next time?
I lost it there.
Think twice before doing such a thing.
Yeah, you'll do such a thing. You will be killed. Maybe not by me, but you will be killed by a miserable death. And you again quite politely responded, that's why I do it. And I will keep doing it because of people like you. We refuse to be intimidated by you. Okay, keep doing it until we meet one of these people. Okay, keep doing this until you meet one of the peoples like me then. You won't be able to say that nobody warned you. This is the sort of thing that you often get, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I get a lot of them. Some of them are just too repetitive. I didn't want to share all of them, but I do screen grab most of them just for my records because people, I mean, I think it's a waste of time because there's too many of them, but some people are saying that it's irresponsible if you don't report these. So I mean,
just do it all the time. Please, Armin, in future, do us a favor. Send me some of these or screenshot it. We do every single show, apart from when we have a guest like you, we do crazy comments. So part of the beginning of the show is we do crazy comments, which is some Muslims, and again, I'm very careful, as clearly it's not all Muslims, but some Muslims, and the comments on YouTube or death threats or whatever the case is. I don't get many of them. You obviously get a lot more. But send me a few of those because it just reminds people that there are crazy people out there.
Yeah, there is more than people recognize. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, this is just a few. It's not just a few. This is like, there's hundreds of thousands of them, like millions of them, right? I mean, these anecdotes don't serve justice. Some people don't ignore statistics, but then they look at these stories and then they realize it's a big deal, but the statistics should have been good enough. The interesting thing is that the same people that point to statistics, when you show them these examples, they always say like, oh, this is not representative of most people. But no, but we have statistics to back up how big of a problem this is, right? So I think giving anecdotes is not meant to prove anything, but it does bring attention for people to go actually check the statistics, right, on how big of a problem is. So don't look at these examples and just by the examples think that this shows that it's a big problem. But the examples should motivate you to actually go check how big of a problem this is. That's how I look at it.
Mm.
But yeah, but I mean, like, look at the one example that shook a lot of people, even in Pakistan, was when there was this politician that was defending somebody that was in jail for blasphemy, and he didn't even blaspheme himself. He was just defending someone else, trying to get them out. And the bodyguard of this politician killed the politician, the guy that was supposed to protect him, right? Because he thought that he's killing a protector of blasphemer. And the government of Pakistan executed the bodyguard, right? And this guy in Pakistan became a hero because he killed a protector of blasphemers, right? And the day that they were like moving his body in the ambulance when he died, you have to look at the numbers of people that came out in support of this martyr. And it was so crazy. The people, like just go look at those pictures, if I could find it actually. But even like sometimes even people in Pakistan that are liberal upper class people sometimes defend that, oh no, it's not that big of a deal, our government is secular. But I know a lot of Pakistanis, when they saw this, they themselves were shook by how big of a problem this is, that they didn't even know about their own country, right? So yeah, I mean, it's insane. Like I do know that there are people that would, I mean, most of these threats are just keyboard warriors. I'm not that worried about it, because these are just people from other countries. I mean, maybe I should be worried about it, I don't know, but I'm not yet. But I do think that the more of us do it, the less each one of us is taking a risk. Like, I'm hoping at some point there's going to be so much people with Allah is gay signs out there, like just like Jaya Muhammad cartoon, so it takes some of this heat off of my back. Because my guess is that most of this risk is not really that big of a deal, but I might be wrong. A lot of them do mention that they're asking for my address. They're saying that they will find people to come and find me and kill me. And, so far, I think that most of them is empty threat, but it would be nice that for the reaction to these threats to be more people coming out, and but again, I don't want to encourage it and then put somebody at risk though. But I'm thinking if it's way too many people, then none of us is taking that much of a risk. Yeah, I mean, even if it doesn't get to me, I might be not thinking about it rationally, because I do have some sense of safety and security here in Canada, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. If I die or if I get killed, which I think it's very unlikely, I'm hoping that at least the reaction to it is going to be a huge number of people coming out with Allah is gay signs, so that it's another indication to people that are trying to use intimidation tactics to silence people, to signal to them that this is never going to work, right? Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. Let's hope nothing obviously happens to you.
No, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of people are telling me like, oh, you need to buy a gun. And I think these are mostly just angry teenagers.
Probably. I mean, anything could happen, but you do the best you can. But I think if anything did, there would be an outcry. And like you say, the more you get known, the more likely it is that people will try to assist you, protect you. Worst case scenario, come to your aid if necessary. You should come and visit us here in the UK. You would have a lot of fun in Speaker's Corner, I can tell you.
I would love that. Yeah.
I don't know if you've been there or if you know about it, but
No,
you would have Muslims everywhere. I mean, you would have such a crowd around you. You'd be spoiled for choice. Unfortunately, there's not too many. Well, let me put it this way. Put it the other way. There's quite a few dim-witted ones, but hey, that's just unfortunately how it works there. But you'd be spoiled for choice.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't. Here's the thing: the ones that the people that we find too dumb to talk to, I think we shouldn't dismiss people like that. The thing is that I think a lot of people that do engage in discussions about religion, politics, philosophy, their expectation of how the average intelligence or the average sophistication of people's conversations is way higher than it should be, because they're mostly surrounded by people that are talk about. I mean, even the people that a lot of people here in the live chat might find stupid, they're actually way or ignorant. They're way above average compared to what the norm is. It's just so my expectation is very, very low. And the thing is, the problem is that we can't just dismiss and ignore these people, because that's, I think, most of our planet. A lot of
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we don't want to dismiss people. I'm
Right.
talking from experience of actually speaking to these people. So it's not because I used to go
No, I
down
know.
and possibly I'll pop down this Sunday. Hopefully, who knows? So I get the first-hand knowledge of speaking to these people.
Right.
But you're right. You do want to speak to as many people as possible.
We just have to find a better strategy to talk to those kind of people, because a lot of people that consider themselves intellectuals, or at least surround themselves with intellectuals, a lot of times I hear them that their solution is like, oh, people need to just get educated, or people just need to become wiser, or think for themselves. And I'm like, well, if that's your solution, you're going to be waiting for that forever, right? We can't just abandon people just because we don't find them. The thing is that most people sense intelligence, or the amount of information that they have, and yes, I know those are completely different, are a product of their biology, their environment, and none of us really picked either of those, right? So the fact that the people here are interested in these kind of conversations, the people that value debates, value discussions, people that value evidence, people that enjoy science, people that enjoy skepticism, people that are curious, people that have the time and resources to spend time on these things or go after more information, you have. I mean, this is not the case for most people. I mean, I remember I was in a taxi in the Philippines one day, and we started talking about the Pope at some point, and I don't know what happened. The conversation went to about evolution, and the guy said atheists are idiots. How could we come from monkeys if they're still monkeys? And up to that point, I thought that was just like a meme, like a joke. But I realized no, actually, people might make that argument. And I kind of told him, like, you're a Catholic. Even the Vatican actually believes in evolution. Like he didn't buy that, but I was thinking in my head, like, wow, this guy is such an idiot. He should just go pick up a book, a science book or something, right? Just read a book. It's a common response you get from atheists, like, just go pick up a book or read something other than the Bible, right? And I thought like such an idiot for thinking that myself, because I'm like, really, Armin, do you want this guy to stop driving his cab and stop providing his family and go pick up a biology book and start reading a biology book? Like, why would he do that, right? Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense for him to go do that, right? And even if he did have the time to do that, why would he have the motivation to do that? I just we need to find a way to reach out to people. And I mean, the fruits of science and intellect, if it was only meant to be given to people that appreciate evidence, science, skepticism, reason, then we should abandon most of the planet, right? I mean, I do think that what we're trying to do is make this planet work for everybody, including the people that do not appreciate the tools and the methods that we use to get to progress. Because if they don't appreciate it, it's just because they don't know, and that's not a crime. Being stupid is not a crime. Being ignorant is not a crime. And I know a lot of people say, oh, in the age that you have access to so much information, ignorance is a choice. That's what people say. But that's not.
I agree. It's not always the case, is it? But willful ignorance, I think, or dishonesty is very different from ignorant. I'm ignorant, you're ignorant. We're all ignorant on something. And that the cure is education, isn't it? But you've got, like you say, you've got to want to do it. But if you're willfully ignorant, or if you're dishonest, well, that's a whole different story.
Well, the thing is that a lot of people don't. The thing is that we're in the age of information, but we're also in the age of misinformation, right? So we have access to a lot of information, but we also have a lot of access to a lot of fake information out there, right? The thing is that with all this information, the good information is like mixed with a whole bunch of noise that is hard for people to recognize. So even if the information is out there, recognizing, a lot of people don't have the tools to recognize which one of them are correct and which one of them isn't, right? They don't have the tools, and they don't even, and even if you want to give them the tools, they don't have the tools to recognize that these are the right tools, right? So I mean,
that's the beauty. That's why we are human beings. We are thriving because we've got brains. So if we don't use the brains and we don't use the information that is made available to us, what's the point of being human?
I guess Armin's point, though, is what's the motivation for them to do it? They believe they have the truth already. They don't believe in evolution. How do we help them to look at this? Because like you say, and it is a response, kind of a knee-jerk reaction response from atheists. Hey, go read a book on evolution or whatever it is,
right.
Whatever the case is. But like you say, what's the point? Why are they going to go read something they don't believe is true and they have no motivation to do it?
And in response to saying that this is human, actually, no, they are the norm. If you think, they are the norm. Like, we are the people that reevaluate their beliefs, look for evidence, are skeptical. We are the minority. Okay, so they are our expectation. That's what I'm saying. The people like us that do hang out with most other people that are interested in these things, I think our expectation of our fellow human beings is a bit higher than what the average human being is like. Like when I, we never blame like a wolf for torturing a deer because that's what, and eating it. Like, that was very barbaric the way you killed it. Why didn't you, right? We don't blame the wolves because that's what wolves do. So for me, like, when I look at humans, I look at them as another animal. And this is an animal that is very tribal, that is going to have wars, that is going to be just follow without questions. That's the norm. This is what this animal does. And when people say, well, that's what wolves do, but my expectations of humans is more, my expectations of a human being is to think more critically. And I'm like, have you met your fellow human beings? Because that's not most of us. That is not most of us. And I think instead of being angry with them, once we reduce our expectations of the average human beings, we will look at them with more sympathy rather than with anger, and try to find a way to make them, jump on board with us in a different way, other than like, hey, go educate yourself, right? We have to find other ways.
Sure, I agree with you. I mean, to what degree do you think Islam, because Stop Spamming often says this, in Islam they taught what to think instead of how to think. So in your experience, to what degree do you think Islam, the ideology, prevents most Muslims from learning how to think as opposed to, just being told what is true?
Well, okay, so there's a difference between Islam and the way what Islam teaches and the way Muslims are influenced by Islam. Okay, so I do think that whatever the way Islam influences Muslims is not always directly in the way people think. It's not like Muslims are kind of like robots and then you insert the Quranic code and they just follow it, right? I do, however, think that the influence is negative, extremely negative, right? Whatever impact it has. But it's not just like it's not like they just follow everything that it's in the Quran or in the Hadith. The thing is that when you ask that question, you have to look at first what the ideology teaches, and the second question is like how that ideology affects people, right? And how do people if you look at the Quran itself, it does belittle people that doubt, that question, that don't believe. So it is anti-skeptic. It is anti people that question the legitimacy of whatever the book is teaching you. So obviously, this is a book that is telling you to follow without question. But you will meet Muslims that will say, no, Islam teaches you to think for yourself, blah, blah, blah. So those are Muslims that say that. But again, what I say about people is like, when you say Muslim, you have to understand that every Muslim is a lot more than just a Muslim, right? For example, I'm an atheist, but am I just an atheist? I'm also a Game of Thrones fan, right? Doesn't my atheism doesn't affect the fact that I'm a Game of Thrones fan, right? I'm a humanist. I'm a skeptic. And many other things, right? I mean, if I show you 1,000 Muslims that enjoy knitting, does that make knitting Islamic? Right? No, because that comes from somewhere else. So I mean, and the interesting thing is that a lot of the views that we have, not just Muslims, but all of us, sometimes we are our views and opinions are influenced by many sources of influence and many sources of information. We all read different books, we watch different YouTube channels, we watch different shows on TV and movies. Our parents have different views than maybe that affected us, which is different from our friends in school, and we have all these different sources, and some of these have that influences on our opinion and our value system. They are contradictory with each other, right? So for example, when people point to a Muslim that is a gay rights activist, like many Muslims that are gay rights activists, or Muslims that are fighting for secularism, and Muslims that are fighting for democracy or for women's rights, and they're like, look, Islam can be pro women's right, pro LGBT. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're basically reducing this person to a Muslim and nothing other than a Muslim, right? Which part of the Quran or Hadith did you point to that it shows that it's pro LGBT rights? You can't point to anything in the Quran, right? Why are you? This person is fighting for gay rights, for women's rights. Why are you taking the credit away from this individual and giving it to an ideology that has always been against values and ideas that this individual is fighting for? If you want to give credit, give the credit to the individual, right? Just because this person is a Muslim, just in the same way that if a Muslim starts knitting, we don't say therefore knitting is Islamic, knitting is promoted by Islam. In the same way, if a Muslim fights for gay rights, or fights for women's rights, or fights for democracy or secularism or free speech, we don't say, oh, this is Islamic, right? Because a Muslim is influenced by other competing ideas, contradictory ideas. We all have competing sources of values in our head coming from different places, right? And what I claim, which I'm happy to debate, is that the Islam influence is an extremely negative influence, right? If somebody else, and most Muslims are better than the Islam. Most Muslims' value system are better than the value system suggested by Islam. And if you look at the sources of those value systems, it's not Islam. It's either their own sense of natural sympathy that they're born with, and other value systems that compete with Islam. And that's why you see that they are more likely to fight for these values if they are raised in progressive environments, or if they or if they consume progressive content. There was never a situation. I mean, you could find somebody maybe, but it's extremely unlikely for a fundamentalist conservative Muslim to become liberal because they reread the Quran one more time, right? No,
but it's very difficult to get this inside a fundamentalist Muslim, because what I tell Muslims themselves, you are better than your God, and they immediately shrink back, and they don't like this, even though they are, and they might realize it, but they will never accept it.
Right, but it's hard to get offended by that because you're also complimenting them. So they get.
That's what I'm trying and doing, but still, but it's frightening. Like, it's frightening that you pay somebody a compliment and you tell them they're better, and they immediately think, "Am I really? No, I can't be. I'm not allowed to be better than my God." So even if they are, they will not accept it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, when I tell Muslims that they're not following Islam, they get offended. I'm like, no, I meant that as a compliment. You don't understand.
Yes,
That was a
exactly.
compliment.
Well, I'm in a discussion at the moment with a guy because he says, yeah, Muhammad is the perfect guy. I said, yeah, but he commanded his men to enjoy raping females. And immediately they are up in arms. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. But
Right.
then I'm saying, guys, you're crucifying me for all I'm doing is quoting Islamic texts.
Right.
This has been deemed authentic by your scholars. So
Right.
don't come to me and complain to me. Go and complain to the scholars. And they will not do that. They will blame me for the contents of Hadith or the Quran or whatever it is when I show them what it actually says. And this for me is quite hilarious.
Right, and it's interesting because, but a lot of people criticize me when I say most Muslims are better than Islam, because they say, well, why are they Muslim then if they're not following Islam, right? Because if they're not following Islam, then they're not really Muslim. And like, if that's your if your definition of a Muslim is somebody that follows all the Islamic laws, then the population of the Muslim community just got reduced to so low, like I don't know, to a tiny fraction of the entire Islamic
No,
world.
I mean, it's two. It's always one person plus Muhammad. That's it. Two Muslims.
Okay, right. So yeah, actually, that's a good.
What is your definition of Islam?
So Islam, the way I try to define it is to be the most inclusive definition possible without being too inclusive for it to lose all meaning, right? So again, these are two separate questions. If you say Islam and Muslims, right? So if you want to define Islam, I think the most inclusive definition, that if you pass that, then you become so inclusive that there is no meaning at all, is Islam is the teachings of the Quran, right? It's the idea that there is one God, Allah, Muhammad is his prophet, and the Quran is the direct word of God. And
Okay,
I think
and
that's
exactly.
that's Islam, right?
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of Muslims disagree with that, because then they will like, well, no, Shias are not Muslims, Sunnis are not Muslims, Ahmadis are not Muslims. But this is the most inclusive. And if you try to make it more inclusive, all of a sudden now anybody could be a Muslim, or nobody's a Muslim, right? So I mean, because people say like, okay, if you take, for example, the Quran, okay, so that's the definition of Islam, the teachings, right? But the definition of a Muslim is somebody that believes that Allah is God, Muhammad is his prophet, and the Quran is the direct word of God. You could add a little bit to it, but then you're going to be less inclusive, right? This is, I think, the most inclusive definition. But I don't add to that definition people that follow the rules, right? Because as long as you believe that Allah is the only God, and Muhammad is the prophet, and the Quran is the direct word of God, even if you have never read the word of God, as long as you believe that technically you're a Muslim. You're just not a good Muslim. You could drink alcohol, have sex before marriage, never pray, never fast, eat pork, drink, do all of that. As long as you believe that, you're a Muslim. You're a shady Muslim, but you're still a Muslim, right? And this is backed up by the fact that when you say the shahadat and you mean it, when you testify these things, then you, based on Islam, you become automatically Muslim before you actually start following the rules, right? And also backed up by the fact that in Islam, a lot of Muslims are going to end up in hell for a long time before they are granted entry to heaven. So the teaching is that just because you're a Muslim, that doesn't mean that you're a good Muslim. You're still going to sin. So you're going to have to be punished for not following the rules of Islam, but you're still a Muslim, right? And for example, if you believe in Jesus as as God or the Son of God, and you believe that believing in Jesus is the way to heaven, you're technically a Christian, even if you don't go to church, even if you don't follow Christian rules. It's a belief. It's based on belief, not based on action, right? And you could be a very crappy Christian that is not following the Christian doctrine, but you just believe in it, so you're a Christian. And again, that's the most inclusive definition. and to make that point, like some people are trying to like be more inclusive, and I say like, well, okay, if you take out, for example, the Quran out of Islam, do you really still is that really as like you have people? If I say like, okay, if you don't believe in the Quran as the direct word of God, you're technically not a Muslim anymore, and they say, well, no, that's the no true Scotsman's fallacy, right? I'm like, no, that's not the no true Scotsman's fallacy. And this is the example I give to show them that this is not like, okay, if I say you don't drink enough to be a Scotsman, then that's the no true Scotsman fallacy, right? But if you say that I've never been to Scotland, my parents are not Scottish, I've never been to Scotland, I have no relatives from Scotland, but I identify as Scottish, I'm going to be like, no, you're not Scottish, right? There is a definition of this word that you have stepped out of. If you know there's a border, and if we on such sensitive topics like Islam and Christianity, if we don't have definitions, then if we don't know what the line is, then we can't even begin to communicate about things without even knowing what we're talking about. Like we have to. You're basically what I notice is that the main. What I think is that the main intention behind confusing definitions is to muddy the water so much, because it's another tactic of defending the indefensible by making the topic more confusing than it necessarily is, by changing definitions. And instead of defending something that cannot be defended, you just change the definition of it to something that is easier to defend, right?
I mean, what do you think would happen if a family, Muslim family, is on a plane, the plane crashes, the family ends up on an island, and the son still gets a whiff of Islam, and then the parents die, and all he's left with is the Quran? Would he know what to do with it?
I don't know. Wait, what did he convert to Islam?
Well, he was a Muslim kid, so he knows about Allah. He knows a couple of stories, but when he was 4, in other words, he just started understanding a little bit, the parents died. Now he survives on an island, so he gets no further hadiths, he gets no further input from anybody. All he has is the Quran. Do you think that he will be a Muslim?
Well, based on the most inclusive definition, he would be a Muslim, but he wouldn't be doing anything that Muslims do.
Exactly.
Right. Like most of the practices and traditions and the Hajj, the how to pray, most of that come from the Hadith, like the vast majority of it, right?
This is exactly, I'm always making these 2 points. What would he do? Can you be a Muslim without the Quran? And what happens if you have only the Quran and you don't get any further tuition from anybody?
You would be a Muslim that wouldn't know how to Muslim.
Exactly.
Can I ask another question kind of on this? I mean, it's slightly separate, but on the same point. Do you ever get this response, or do you ever get asked this by Muslims, Armin? You weren't a real Muslim, and then they ask you various questions to test your knowledge, and what they're looking for is you not to be able to answer, "Gaha, you see, you didn't know that, you weren't a true Muslim." Do you ever get that?
Oh yeah, all the time. I'm an ex-Shia. I get the accusation of I can't be an ex-Muslim because I was never a Muslim all the time, because I was not Sunni, I was Shia. So a lot of Sunnis are like, there's your problem. You weren't. You were Shia. That's all. You already started from a position that you were not. Like, first of all, a lot of people ask us to stop using the term ex-Muslim because we were Shia. So we were never Muslim to begin with. And a lot of people say that you never got the reason why you think you left Islam is because you were never exposed to the true Islam. Because if anybody is exposed to true Islam, it's impossible for them to leave Islam. Like it's so solid, the logic and the beauty of it is so undeniable that once you go Muslim, you can never leave. So this is why just the existence of the term ex-Muslim is so irritating to many Muslims, because their whole philosophy is that it's impossible for anybody to leave Islam once they are exposed to it.
Yeah, that's why the people, when I went to the mosque or the Islamic Culture Center, they said to me, "What is wrong with you? You know so much about Islam and you are not a Muslim." They can't understand.
Like,
I
how
want
is
to
that
just ask a
possible?
question from the chat. This one you must get as well, and I'd love your response, Armin. Somebody in the chat is saying, a Muslim is saying, "Hey, you all stay focused on the creator you don't believe in," or a variant is, "Hey, why do you guys focus on Islam and you don't even believe in it?" Can you speak to that?
It's kind of like somebody. It's kind of like, okay, so if let's say that you sign up with this insurance company, right? And then your house catches fire, and then you go to the insurance company and they don't pay up, and then you ask around and you find out that this whole thing was a scam, right? And now your friend all of a sudden is going, you find out that your friend is now signing up with an insurance company, and it's the same insurance company. Would it not be irresponsible of you to let them know that, hey, maybe not, don't do that, right? Wouldn't you at least try to? If they don't listen to you, that's on them. But wouldn't it be irresponsible of you if you don't try to tell people that, hey, don't fall for the scam? And another example I give is that, you know, if Islam is true, then I think it's irresponsible for many Muslims that are not trying to at least reach out to us and tell us why Islam is true. Because if Islam is true and all of us here are going to burn in hell for eternity for not being Muslim, then, and they like, oh, we don't care, you can, you know, we're not going to force our religion on you, we could believe whatever you want, you live and let live. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You think I'm going to burn in hell for eternity if I don't become Muslim, and you're not even going to warn me about it? Like, isn't that a bit irresponsible of you? It's not forcing, and you're not forcing it on me if you just suggested to me to consider a new argument that I haven't considered, right? I mean, you know, I compare Islam to cancer. I call it a dangerous ideology. I have said a lot of things, and a lot of Muslims come to me and say, like, well, isn't that a bit more aggressive? Like, look, if Islam is true, atheism is cancer. Atheism is a dangerous ideology. Atheism, you should fight against atheism. Because, I mean, and that's not because you hate atheists. That's because you care about atheists, right? You're fighting atheism because of your sympathy towards atheists. You're trying to help them out. You don't want them to suffer, right? So even if so, once you could see it that way, now put yourself in our shoes. Let's say Islam is true and we are the wrong ones, but at least can you appreciate that from our perspective, Islam is a very dangerous ideology, and the main victims of Islam are Muslims. So not only we're not fighting Islam because we hate Muslims, our main issue with Islam is the fact that our main problem with Islam is what it does to Muslims, right? So you might be right. We might be wrong about this. We might have got it completely wrong. Okay, maybe it's the best thing that has ever happened to Muslims, right? But can you at least appreciate that that's where we're coming from? Right? We are not doing this because we hate you guys. And in fact, if we do think it's a dangerous ideology, it would be irresponsible of us not to be talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now, looking at the ideology as such, what would you say is the most compelling factor, argument, thing that would draw people in, and what is drawing people in to this ideology today in 2018?
To Islam?
Yeah.
Having Muslim parents.
And if
basically
you are not,
their birth rates are the number one thing they have going for them.
Okay, what would be compelling for you? What do you think is the most compelling thing about Islam today?
That would make me a Muslim?
No, just what just in general, what do you think is the most compelling? What is the best thing about Islam?
The best thing about Islam is that it hasn't taken over the whole planet yet.
You have to think about that one.
Okay, then let me. I'm not getting anywhere with you.
Right.
You are such a stubborn non-Muslim.
It's like, can you tell me the best thing about cancer, and then I'll see, I'll be able to answer you.
It gets your relatives to come around, and you know, they might not have paid attention to you in the past. Now you've got cancer, and they come and, you know, give you their best wishes. So look for what's the silver lining. You know, if there was
the silver lining is that once you recognize how bullshit it was, then you'll become more skeptical about other things that you believe in. The best thing about Islam is ex-Muslims.
Okay.
Well, I agree.
What do you think pulls people in today in 2018? People who are not exposed to it, people who come from a non-Muslim background and have ginger hair and then become Muslims. Why is that?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I think the reason why I didn't say anything good about Islam when you asked me the first question is because I think the worst thing about Islam are the so-called good parts of Islam, right? Because what is true about the Christian meme and the Christianity meme and the Islamic meme is that the fact that they're such powerful memes, right? I mean, that's why they survive. This is the survival of memes, the ones that they're not designed on purpose to be such powerful memes. They just lasted longer and spread more because they ended up being so powerful. And a meme is that is powerful is probably because it has managed to tap into our greatest fears, to our greatest desires, to our sense of desire for belonging, to our desire for higher purpose, for our desire for a community, desire for meaning. And the way these memes have somehow managed to tap into those so much. But the thing is that whatever makes these memes survive is not necessarily in the best interest of the individual. And the example I usually give is like just in the same way that the relationship between humans and their genes is that the desires that we have as individuals was not necessarily the goal and quote unquote goal, like metaphorically, because obviously genes don't have goals because they're not conscious, but it seems like they do. But that was evolutionary. That was not the goal of the genes, right? These desires were meant as a tool for us to reproduce, but we overcome our genes, and now those desires have turned into goals rather than tools. So we don't give a shit that our genes want us to reproduce as much as we want. We have our own agenda now, right? So us as individuals are to these memes what our genes are to us as individuals. And the problem with these memes is that what makes them survive and last longer is it might be good for the survival of the meme, but it's not necessarily in the best interest of the individuals that are used to spread the meme. So we need to basically find ways to know what are these desires and what are these fears that these memes are tapped into. So I guess here's what's good thing about maybe Islam and Christianity. The silver lining is that they might show us by the fact of surviving so much, by the fact of spreading so much, we can tell that they must be tapping into something that we as humans need. And it might have been very difficult for us to recognize what those things are. But we could try to analyze Islam and Christianity and figure out what is it that they're tapping into that is obviously such an important need of humans that maybe we could address in a much less destructive way. Because they have monopolized it, and we need to find a way to basically, remove like all the bullshit and all the nonsense and all the harmful part of it, and still find a way to satisfy those needs or address those fears, right? Because if we don't, then the meme will take over again.
Okay. Do you ever argue anything out of Quran or any text, or do you always just address the people?
What do you mean?
Okay, if I listen to you, you never go, well, the Quran says, Muhammad says, blah, blah. You always go and say, okay, the people think this is the psychology of the people. So you're always towards the person, the people. that you are more interested in the personality of someone than the background that they believe in, the background of the Quran or the texts themselves. I've not heard you argue anything from out of the books or the text, but it's always the people, how they react to certain things.
Well,
Is that?
No, I mean, I think we move the things in the when we came out of Islam, the parts of the text that we do actually we have episodes on our podcast that goes through the most ridiculous parts of the Quran and Hadith, and those are fun.
Yeah, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but the thing is that they're so obviously bullshit that I don't feel like hey, capturing slave women in war, that's kind of wrong. I don't think we need to. I mean, when I'm talking to you guys, I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, the Quran is a book that advocates for beating your wife, advocates for tells you how to treat your slaves, tells you that people that do not believe in the book that you're reading will deserve eternal torture and to scream in pain for eternity. I mean, this book is obviously barbaric, backwards, and it's garbage if it's used as a guide to life. I mean, it should. There's not only do I criticize it, I'm actually so critical of people that want to reform it. Like, how would you do these people also want to reform Mein Kampf because they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater? I'm actually very critical of the book. I think these books are beyond reform. You can't. These books, the only good that they could come of them is looking at them as historical documents and study them as historical, as books of as part of history and analyzing it that way. But as a guide to life, it's so barbaric, it's so backward that I don't even. It's funny to me that I even have to make that point because how obviously barbaric they are. When I talk to individuals, because I know most of them would not be swayed by such barbaric ideas, then I try to figure out how the relationship between them and their scripture. It's a lot more indirect than okay, rape good, wife beating good. Is this that's why you have to from one individual to another individual, you have to figure out where they're coming from and what they're saying before you can even address them. But but when it comes to the text itself, both the Bible and the Quran, to me, the fact that we need to even point out it's so sad that it's beyond me that they've survived this long, right? These are such. I mean, even the so-called good parts of them are so simplistic, so naive, so useless as a guide to life, that the fact that you need to even point that out is tiring and beyond me. I mean, what I tell Muslims is like the Quran became a lot more interesting as an atheist to me than as a Muslim, right? Because as a guide to life is such a horrible book, and it's such a stressful book to read if you think about if you read it as somebody that thinks that this is all true. But if you read it the same way you would read Harry Potter or the way Bart Ehrman looks at the Bible, then all of a sudden it becomes just like other forms of myth become interesting, or it becomes like a puzzle and like a piece of history that you need to solve, and becomes a lot more interesting that way. I mean, the way the belief part is the problematic part, right? So I mean, you could enjoy Mayan culture, Mayan history, Mayan text, and you could admire that, because I don't think that requires you to believe. I mean, but if you all of a sudden start believing in Mayan text and think human sacrifice is a good idea, that's when you have the problem. I mean, you could enjoy Harry Potter and maybe even get some moral lessons out of it. But if all of a sudden kids start thinking Hogwarts is real and start packing their bags looking for Hogwarts and get lost in the woods, now you have a serious problem, right? The belief part is a problem.
Okay, speaking of packing and looking for something, how do you select your projects? Because we still haven't addressed what happened in Starbucks, and I still want to talk to you about this. How
Right.
do you select your projects? How do you go about, or do they just happen to you, and this is just by chance and just random encounters?
Well, some of them are suggested to me, and I go with it. Some of them I come up with, but the Allah is gay sign was done first by the ex-Muslims of Great Britain, and then I saw Lauren Southern picked it up, and she got labeled as a terrorist and kicked out of, she wasn't allowed entry to the UK. And I looked at, and I thought this sign should not be offensive. So that's where I follow. They encourage, like, ex-Muslims of Great Britain. They encourage people. I brought it up in a podcast, and somebody here in Vancouver, the person that volunteered to video me, he brought it up with me, like he would be willing to volunteer. After hearing me on the podcast, he said he would volunteer his time if I do it. So that's why I decided to do it. Before that, it was the peak. Another time that I used to get a lot of death threats is when we did the Kaaba, when we photoshopped it, we changed the black drapes with the LGBT rainbow, the rainbow Kaaba. That was something I came up with. But this most recent incident, that was Muhammad Sayed and Sarah Haider's idea from ex-Muslims of North America. And they reached out to me and some other ex-Muslim members of XMNA. I'm a member of XMNA, very happy with what they do and the work that they do. So they reached out to me. They said that, would you be interested in doing this in Houston? So I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. So that was their idea.
Cool. I wanted to ask you something as well. What's your view on these sort of, presumably you come across this as well, these modern apologetics or apologists who want to reinterpret the verse? Well, beating your wife doesn't really mean that. It means with a miswak, and that's a light little tap, and it wasn't really raping. You know what? These women would have died otherwise, so we would take them in and we'd have sex with them, and, we'd take care of them. And so what's your thoughts on this? And do you get that sort of apologetic come your way?
All right, so let's look at Mein Kampf, right? And be like, okay, let's not just get rid of this book, okay? Maybe the Aryan race is talking about the humanity in all of us, Maybe it wasn't talking about all the Jews. It was Hitler wasn't. Hitler was a good person. He wasn't like. By the way, please don't cut this. I'm not defending Hitler, okay? I'm just showing you how ridiculous it is. Somebody's gonna come edit this and say, So imagine somebody said, like, Hitler, he was a great person. The Jews that he gassed were just specifically the Jews at his time. They were all evil. He's obviously not against all the Jews. He's actually pro-equality. He's for gay rights. You just have to read it the right way. Like, that's honestly horse shit, right? We don't make these kind of excuses for any other hate book that would ever be written. This is unique to the Bible and the Quran. And if you read the Quran, it's actually a much worse, hate book than even the Mein Kampf. The amount of hate it has for most of us here, right? And the Kafirun is obsessed with us. It's obsessed with the Kafirs. It's one of the most used words, and the punishment. I mean, you can't. It's hard for you to get over a few pages without getting reminded of what's going to happen to us in the afterlife, right? It's funny because most of the times when it mentions how we're going to be tortured and how we're going to meet the wrath of God, it follows it up by how loving and caring God is, which is kind of like it's so passive aggressive. It's like I don't know, it's like a joke at the end. But it's such a fucking disgusting hate book that anybody that suggests that this book can be reformed or look at in a peaceful way are being dishonest or have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, the example that you give is a really good example, because of the gymnastic arguments people go through to try to. It's interesting because you have verses in the Bible that tells you that you can capture women as slaves. Sorry, in the Quran, capture women as slaves, and you have verses in the Quran that you should beat your wife if you fear disobedience after you follow 2 other steps. But this beating wife one has captured more people's criticism more than actually raping women, because you captured them in war. Because I think I don't know, I think they're capturing and raping them as with your right hand in war. That's more disgusting verse. But I think because wife beating is in our modern world is something that we're more exposed to, that and we know that happens more often. I don't think there's that many more wars happening that other than ISIS or Taliban that they are capturing women in war as a booty. But I think because this captures a lot of our imagination, because we experience it in some other people's lives, we know about it in news, we hear about it, so we see this as we are more sensitive toward it. But so that's why we have more Muslims trying to defend that verse, because we react to that more compared to the other verses that are even more problematic. But if you look at this verse, it's pretty clear what it's saying. There, so the interesting is, so let's be clear about what it says. First of all, it makes it very clear at the beginning of the verse that why men are in position of authority, why they are above women, because they are the ones that are working and bringing in the money and all that. So that's why they are above women. And then it goes into telling you that the 3 steps that you have to take if you fear disobedience from your wives. And this is very important, because it doesn't say if they actually disobey. It actually says if you fear disobedience. So just fearing it is good enough, right? And it actually doesn't suggest that you can beat your wife. It tells you that you should. It's a command. It's not a suggestion. But it first says that you have to stop talking to them. So give them the silent treatment. And if that doesn't work, then abandon them from kick them out of your bed. And if that doesn't work, then beat them, right? And and the root, the verb that is used here, the root the 3-letter root words letters are zaraba, right? Which is for hitting. So the people that defend this verse first mention that it is meant to be light hitting. And they point to a hadith that they ask Muhammad, how do we beat them? And he takes his toothbrush out. He's like, with this, right? Like he was trying to say, like, it needs to be with something gentle. There's 2 problems with that. First of all, this is, even if that was the case, first of all, this is already, I'm hoping no feminists will be okay with this either. Like, it's interesting how people get offended by so many of these things these days. But even if it's like, hey, like how demeaning it is for you to be like, to hit there even lightly by saying like, by telling, the fact that she has to be obedient to you is already problematic. Even if you're symbolically hitting her to teach her a lesson, is such a disrespectful and such a demeaning act that even if it's not beating her to hurt her, it's already such a problematic verse. Another problem with this explanation is that the Quran itself never says that, and we know that the Quran has a higher position of authority than the Hadith. And if God really did mean that hit them lightly, he could have just added the lightly word there, and he didn't. And the best you could say about the God is that he's such a shitty communicator. Like, if you have to clarify to us that he meant lightly, then why did he need you to clarify that? Why he couldn't have just added?
Yeah, exactly. Or touch them, or some other word, you know.
Well, I mean, the whole premise of them having to be obedient to you is already problematic before we even get to the wedding, right? then the interesting thing is that this has been the explanation for this for such a long time, that this is problematic to the new people that are defending it, that it doesn't mean hitting, but it means walking towards to her, which now all these people that point to the hadith with the toothbrush now becomes problematic, because if it means walking towards you, so what is that hadith then, right? What is the hadith that he said with the toothbrush? Walk towards her with the toothbrush? Like, that makes no sense, right? So those hadiths that Muhammad says how to hit them makes it clear that this is not about walking towards somebody. And another problem is that, first of all, one thing to point out, that all these excuses only came when the new modern world came with superior moral values and these barbaric ancient values. Like for 1400 years, all Arab-speaking scholars understood this and had commentary on these verses with the understanding that this is hitting your wife, right? Only only when the rest of the world became more progressive and with higher standards, only then we now have a minority again, and this is very important, a very minority group of Muslims, a very fringe minority group of Muslims that are telling you that this doesn't mean hit. Like, so the fact that for 1400 years all the commentary on it suggested otherwise, and now you're suggesting that, speaks volumes. Another point is that if you look at the way the verb is used, it's so clear that it means hitting. And if you read Ali Rizvi's book, The Atheist Muslim, he explains that there very well. The explanation I give, I mean, to anybody Arab speaking, when they read it, they know exactly what this verse means. But the example I give is like, if I'm watching baseball and they say strike 3, right? And I'm trying to translate this to somebody else, and I say like, oh, this means that the baseball players are now on strike, right? This is a union issue right now. As an English speaker, like, okay, no, that's not what this means here, right? But just because the word sounds similar, first of all, the way the verb is used is very clear what it means, but the context, any Arab-speaking person could tell you that this is absolute horseshit. And the fact that this is so obviously horseshit suggests that this is gymnastic arguments is not meant for Muslim consumption or Muslim scholarly consumption. This is meant for a PR move for non-Muslims, right? Not for Muslims themselves, right?
Yes. I think it's the collision with modernity, where some of these apologists are now scrambling to make it appear that it's in fact is not as barbaric as you quite rightly have said. For the last 1400 years, now they've got to find this word can mean 15 different things, and this is what it means now. Right. Because of how barbaric the Western societies see many of these verses.
Right, and this is why I think that these kind of reform movements are not only not helpful, they're actually very dangerous, because their whole point is to provide a cover, provide an excuse for a very dangerous ideology that will keep doing what it's doing and making its death harder to achieve and making it harder to defeat. It's basically a sugar coating for a poison pill, right? And actually, this is something that is so powerful about the Christianity and Islam meme, is that the problem with some other memes that are very destructive is that they're pretty obvious on what they stand for. They're more obvious, like if you Mein Kampf or communism, or it's easier to criticize. But the beast of Islam, whenever it's in threat, it looks like a dragon when it's in power, but as soon as it feels threatened, it looks like a little puppy until you look the other way and it turns back into a dragon, right? Mm-hmm. So, and these reform movements is kind of dangerous, because that's exactly how these things last longer, right? This is a defense mechanism that they have. I mean, when one example I give is like, when you're fighting the dragon of religion, if we might be like, almost killing it, but then it's injured, and you're looking at it and you're like, hey, it's almost over, let's destroy it. And you're saying like, well, it doesn't look very harmful right now. Like, yeah, because we are attacking it. That's why it's in defensive mode. This is not when you have your foot on his throat. That's not when you let it go. This is when you make the final blow. This is actually very frustrating to me, because everything that made Islam or Christianity less dangerous was always from sources outside of Islam and Christianity. And this clever thing that both Islam and Christianity do when you put them in that position that they are being defeated is that they can't claim credit for this weak position they are in. But if you look at how they got there, is because of other people challenging them. Like, for example, when it comes to Christianity, a lot of people are like, oh, look at Western countries, look at Christianity, we're reformed, we can do the same thing with Islam. And like, no, the Reformation had nothing to do with what Christianity is today, right now. It was the Enlightenment movement. The Enlightenment movement was not a movement that looked at Christianity and changed Christianity from within. The Enlightenment movement was a movement from outside of Christianity that challenged Christianity, that went against religious dogma, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to Islam, there's nothing within Islam or within the Quran or within the Hadith that is going to make Islam passive or make it take the back seat. It's always going to be forces outside of Islam, right?
Well, I mean, well, yes, potentially that's, well, true in the sense that there's pressure from Western societies. But I mean, I speak to many Muslims in Speaker's Corner, and they all want to reinterpret it, because I think that's what and a lot of them are converts, reverts, whatever the case may be. And some of them are, being born Muslim, but they've been brought up in a Western society, and they desperately want it to be accepted. So for them, there's reinterpretations to it. Doesn't really mean this, it can mean this, and the scholars say X, Y, and Z, and so forth, is their desperate attempt, it seems to me, to make it appeal to people in the West.
Yeah, and my response to that is, don't let them do that, because that's a desperate. I mean, they don't know that what they're doing is acting on behalf of a meme that is in retreat, and this is its final defense, one of its defense mechanisms. And no, when something is so dangerous, when it tries to show you a different face of it, you don't let it that excuse stand. And what I say, a book that with its very doctrine teaches you that people like you and me deserve to be tortured forever, that women should be you should beat your wives, that the way you treat your slaves, it has instructions for it. This is not a book that you make excuses for. This is not a book. There's no. If this was not labeled as a religion, nobody would tolerate making excuses for such an idea. Nobody would tolerate me saying that Hitler was a good person and he wasn't talking about all the Jews, and the Aryan race means like the warmness in your heart or whatever bullshit I come up with, right? Nobody would tolerate it. Like, get the fuck out of here with your excuses for hate. Only religion manages to get away with such excuses like that. And once it become, when you make excuses, and again, this is the poison will still be there, right? This is sugar coating, and it's a very thin sugar coating, right? Because what the good Muslims are doing without knowing it is that they are the shield for many crimes that is being protected by this ideology, right? And many people are suffering. This is what the warm and fuzzy messages in Christianity or Islam, like be kind to orphans, or love your neighbors. This is what it does, because it makes a lot of good people become advocates of a barbaric and dangerous ideology. Without knowing it, they become a shield for such a destructive force. But go on.
But that would push back at you and say, well, this is the real interpretation of Islam. People like ISIS and other people, and we had a Muslim on the other night actually who says it's not a religion of peace, and he's quite happy to accept the Quran as it is face value. But the other Muslims, Sunni Muslims, because we most often speak to Sunni Muslims, they want to push back. No, ISIS and this other fellow and this sort of thing. No, they're all wrong. So there's a desperate attempt by them to push back and go, no, what we believe is actually true. We're not shielding it. We believe this, and these other guys, they're not the real Muslims. They've got the wrong interpretation, etc.
Well, I call horse shit on them. And like, look at this. I tell them, like, if you can't admit that this verse is advocating for this horrible act and that horrible act and this horrible act, can you at least admit that if it wasn't advocating for those, it's written in such a poor way that it could be read as if it's advocating for those? Mm-hmm. Can you at least admit that? And is that not problematic enough? Right?
That's exactly.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Do you have more, Rob, or because I've got 3 questions from the chat.
Okay. No, you go ahead, Stops.
Okay, I mean.
Sorry, before you do, Stops, how much time have you got, Armin? We've been an hour and a half. We can do 5 hours here. Well, 4 hours probably. Okay. But you just let us know, and I'll keep an eye on time for you.
Another 20 minutes, maybe?
Cool. Okay. Go ahead, Stops.
So I've got 3 questions from the chat now. What I'd like you to do, don't explain everything. Don't go crazy on this. Just give us the bullet point answers, okay? Especially if you hear the first one. What do women need to do to go to paradise? Is it simply obeying the husband? What do you think? What is your take on this?
Okay, when I read the Quran, it does seem like that. It just assumed that whoever's reading this is a man, right? I mean, when the book tells you that we gave you women, as like gifts or whatever, like, I don't know if they were even thinking about. I mean, okay, so what women have to do to go to heaven? They just, I mean, according to most Islamic schools of thought, they just have to pray 5 times a day, do fast, give zakat. I mean, the thing is that when it comes to going to heaven and going to hell, most people will end up sinning anyways. I mean, almost unless you're Muhammad, or according to Shias, unless you're one of the 12 Imams or Fatima, or unless you're one of the prophets, because they are sinless, they're ma'soom. So the thing is that if you have sinned, then you can tawbah, which is like repent, and the sins will be forgiven, unless it's one of those unforgivable sins, which is like shirk, which is having partners. Yeah. Okay. So even if you do sin, you could get those wiped out by repenting and really meaning that you repent. But as long as you're a Muslim and you have sinned and you haven't repented, you are going to go to hell for a while. But then once you paid for those sins in hell, because you're a Muslim, you eventually are going to graduate to heaven. You just have to pay for whatever sins you haven't. And again, there's 2 types of sins in Islam. There's sins against man and sins against God, right? So when you sin against God, yeah, you could just ask God for forgiveness and he can forgive you. But when you sin against man, like if I miss a prayer, that's just sin against man. And God just forgives me, right? Sorry, that sins against God, and God can just forgive me. Yeah. Sorry, people. But if you sin against,
I know you're drunk when you do these shows, yeah.
But I don't know. But oh my God, this street noise. But
if you're sitting in a sound box,
yeah, no. I'm sitting anyways. But if I steal from you, then if you don't forgive me, then God is not going to forgive me. So I have to actually get your forgiveness. This is one point in Islam that I think makes more sense than Christianity, because in Christianity you could rape a whole community and murder another community, and go to Jesus and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and then you're going to go to heaven, right? But in Islam, if you sin against man, then you can't just bypass them and go to God. They have to forgive you, and before you get forgiven. So, and if they die before they give you forgiveness, then you're fucked, because now they didn't get a chance to forgive you, and now you have to pay for their sins. And like, for one story that they told us, and this is true for both men and women, so it's not much difference. But this is one story they told us in school, was this one guy always made sure that he pays off all his debts and doesn't harm anybody. And one time he borrowed like one small coin from somebody, and he made a note to pay him back. And he went to his store, and his store was closed, and he didn't know. He just put the coin under his door, and when he went home, he had a dream that he's in hell, and that coin was made like hot red glowing and put on his skin. And he was because he was a religious man, apparently this was a revelation from him from the other side. So he realized that he better make sure that that guy gets the coin, if he doesn't want to burn, because those coins are gonna burn your skin. So yeah, but
people in hell need to pray.
People in hell need to pray. I don't think you have time for praying, because you're most of the time you're screaming.
Because I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, no, you're gonna be too busy screaming to be able to pray.
Okay, and again, just the bullet point answer. How is rape wrong with the selfish gene theory?
How is what?
Rape wrong.
How is rape wrong with selfish gene theory?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so definition, based on my definition of wrong is what harms, what causes pain and suffering, and rape causes pain and suffering, so that's why it's wrong. But what does that got to do with the selfish gene?
Well,
I think a lot of people misunderstand when
exactly. This goes back to the sharks, where the selfish gene is supposed to make sharks rape another shark because they are distributing their genes.
Okay, but this is okay. Looking at evolution and thinking that evolution, this is the laws of evolution, so we need to follow it. It's kind of like looking at laws of the theory of gravity and be like, well, based on the theory of gravity, everything must go down. So drop everything, push people on the ground, push everything off the table, because that's the law of gravity. You have to follow the laws of nature. Like, what the fuck, right? Just we're observing that evolution is a thing. That doesn't mean that whatever is happening it should be our goal.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's an observation of nature.
This was cool. These are just short questions which require short answers, and that's
right.
Last one I have from the chat. What do you think about Shias helping America kill Sunnis in Iraq?
Well, can you be more specific about one specific? Okay, so so when it comes to policies like that, it's hard to make general judgment calls and stuff, right? Because a lot of people, for example, are anti-US foreign policy, pro-US foreign policy, anti-Israel, pro-Israel, and the situation are usually more complicated, and you have to look at situations case by case and see if it made sense for that specific situation. And if the question, I do know about some operations that the US had that made a lot of sense to me, that they did that, and I know there are so many examples of them fucking up. However, sometimes it might be in your best interest to because of the situations on the ground, you might have to work with people that have questionable views, but that doesn't mean that I'm endorsing all of them. There's a lot of times that you're supporting people that shouldn't be supported, that the long-term consequences of that is going to be way more disastrous than the benefits that you're getting in the short term. But there are examples of time that even though the people that you're working with are questionable, the situation does require you working with them. So it really depends on looking at scenarios case by case.
Okay. I've got a question on slavery now. before I ask that, what if you look at the situation? No, let me just go there. Why do Muslims think Islamic slavery, not normal, but Islamic slavery, is okay?
Because it's Islamic.
Yeah. So Islamic, because the thing is, I'm always laughing when they say Islamic slavery. Is like, you see a sign in the window, slave wanted, apply within, and they go and they knock on the door, say, please, can I be your slave? And they come with all sorts of different excuses why slavery is actually okay when it's Islamic slavery. So it's quite funny.
Just a quick response is like the apologetics says that they point to worst cases of slavery and say, well, it's not that slavery, this slavery was better than that slavery, and that's bullshit, because you can't find examples of Islamic slavery that was absolutely barbaric. There were a lot of them that they cut people's balls off so that they couldn't have children, right? So we didn't have that in the North American. The North, that to be honest, the North American one was North American Atlantic slave trade was on average way more barbaric than what the norm for slavery was, but that doesn't excuse slavery. If you were going to make that argument, well, the slavery in South America was even worse than the slavery in North America. So if you're going to justify the slavery of the Arab Empire because the slavery of North America was worse, then you could also excuse the slavery committed in North America by pointing out how more barbaric the slavery in South America was.
Yeah. Okay, the question, why did Muslims castrate their slaves? We're going to leave that. I have a question regarding the drive to kick out dictators, the sheikhs, the whatever, doesn't matter. Do you think it makes sense to replace a dictator with the rule of the people? Or do you think that the dictators were killing less people than are being killed today?
Again, this is like no blanket statement is ever going to be.
Pity. Why can't you make it easy for us?
No, it's not. I mean, so for each one of these answers, you're going to find good examples for each side, right? I mean, there are a lot of people in Iraq that suffered so much from Saddam's removal, for example, right? But there are a lot of also people in Iraq that are very happy with Saddam's removal. But again, if you want to look at it from a utilitarian perspective, the analysis that goes into doing a cost-benefit, evaluation is a lot more complicated than people sometimes think, right? What I do know is that removing dictators on average it's more effective if it's done from the ground up rather than from the from top down, because the power you're creating power vacuums and haven't usually ended up working very well. Power vacuums doesn't necessarily give rise to democratic systems, or it doesn't give rise to democratic systems that last or that are stable. So I do think that and even so if you want to have democratic systems, I think making change, educating the public and activism from the ground up and making progress, making changes in a progressive way. You need to first create a demand for democracy before you could get democracy, and you have to have good transition plans. And those are not easy. Those are not those are complicated. A lot of times the demand for democracy was just has been used as an excuse for other agendas. But once the dictator was removed, bringing in democracy was shown to be a lot more complicated than it seemed to begin with. But I mean, if that was really the agenda, I think they would have gone about a different way doing it. I'm not an anti-interventionist. I do think intervention is necessary because no government owns its people. If a government is cruel to its people just because it's in a different country, it doesn't mean it's their business. No, it's all of our business. These are fellow human beings. It's not the government's property just because they have lines drawn on the sand and they happen to be on the other side of the land. I think we need to care about our fellow human beings in whatever country they are, and it's our business if they are being harmed in any way.
Okay.
So I am for intervention, but I'm for smart intervention.
Okay, but that is the most difficult. I agree with you.
Right.
Okay, last question from you. What would be your dream activity in the next 3 months?
My dream activity would be having these kind of conversations with more people.
Oh, really? So you think that talking about these things is going to really make a difference?
Oh yeah, I don't think I know it because it has. I've seen it do that. Well, I think the what we need to do is just make sure that we get a larger audience, right? So we need to be able to reach out to more and more people. The more people we're able to reach, the more people that we have a conversation with, and more people that we get to have willing to come to us and have a conversation with, the more minds we can change. I mean, what do we have other than conversations, honestly? What do we have?
It's amazing that you should say that, because I was talking to Rob this week and I said, Rob, we need to sit down because I have this idea, and because I'm very unhappy with that we're not really moving fast enough. Okay. I'm a business person and I like things, they need to move, they need to click, then things need to run, and it's not. It's stagnant. So I've got a couple of ideas what I'd like to do. I just need to find some people to do it with, to go and move. And it's funny that you should mention exactly this kind of thing. So we'll see. I think we'll stay in touch and see what we can come up with in the next couple of weeks, because we need to speed it up a little bit, I think, and turn up the heat.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's it from my side. What about Rob? Do you have a
couple of questions, and then we know we're using valuable time of Armin's here. So a couple of quick questions. There was a comment in the chat from a Muslim, fairly vocal Muslim that Stops has often run-ins with, who said he, i.e. you, Armin, is looking for excuses for his inability to live in the obedience of Allah. He most likely seldom prayed. He most likely did not seek knowledge. We don't need him. He needs Islam. And this is probably in response to you leaving Islam. That's,
Well, I did pray a lot. I read the Qur'an. I prayed 5 times a day. I did fast. I was the fundamentalist in my household. My parents were fucking freaked out by me because I kept on trying to get them to stop drinking, stop to start praying. I was trying to save them. But even if what's the point exactly? What's the issue?
Well, essentially that, you didn't want to, be in obedience of Allah and so forth. And, it's all your own doing. You just didn't want to follow this. You wanted to follow your own way. I've heard that.
Well, actually, the thing is, when I was losing faith in God, I actually was not at all happy about it. I actually was praying to God because I noticed that I'm losing faith in God. I prayed, I cried, I said I was a very loner because I went to a very liberal school. Most of my classmates didn't like the fact that I was so religious, and they so I didn't have that many friends, which helped me even become more closer to take Islam even more seriously, because at some point I thought God is my only friend, and I did. And when I was praying, I was telling my God that you're the only thing I have nothing else, and the more I think about it, the less faith I have in you. I think I'm losing you. Please, any sign, anything you could send my way. I need you. I can't live without you. I cried many nights. I didn't, when I lost my faith, I didn't want to lose my faith. I really wanted God to be real. So it was I think I feel I was forced by the logic of it, not because of any emotional appeal of not being a Muslim. But I would want to say to that person, even if is that don't make assumptions about people. Even like you might have been right about this. I might have been like, yeah, you're right. I kind of looked at other people that weren't taking Islam seriously. And I thought this is such a but to be fair to you, like most people that call themselves Muslims weren't actually really following Islam anyways. But let's say you were right. I could have looked like, hey, my life would have been so much easier if I wasn't a Muslim, and this is more appealing way to live, and that was my motivation. Let's say you were right. The thing is, before me saying that, you wouldn't know if that's the case. So don't just like guess things about people that you don't know and just assume is true. Maybe ask before you make such assumptions about people.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the view is that you can't possibly have left Islam because, you know, if you look at it closely, it has to be the truth, and it's a fault of yours. It can't be a fault in the religion, and so obviously that's the kind of response. So they're looking for an excuse as to why you left. It couldn't have been that you actually found it to be untrue. It's a problem with you or something, your understanding, or whatever the case is.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe consider who's that? What's that person's name?
Kenny Bomer.
Kenny
Bomer. He's a convert of 30 years. He's a white Texan that lives in Texas, obviously, and we have interactions with him on Facebook. We had him on the show here, but he just talks nonstop. He believes in all
Next Saturday, we're going to have a chat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I always invite people to consider that maybe there is a logical reason for why Islam is wrong. Just maybe consider it, and I promise them to always reconsider that maybe Islam is true. I make that promise to them. I will make that consideration again and again, but also consider that there might be a chance that you are wrong.
Let me tell you what I have done now is I've opened a group on Facebook where I challenge Muslims to come and show me something that is verifiably correct in the Quran. And so far, nothing, not one has been able to come up with a suggestion where they would say, okay, this is correct in the Quran, and here's why. Nobody has managed so far.
Okay, a couple more quick ones, and then we'll obviously let Armin go. This was from a Sunni Muslim who thinks he's got the truth, and we've had him on the show a couple of times here. Shia are not usually exposed to authentic belief. Authentic belief is taken from the Quran and the Sunnah. Shia do not have that.
I already knew, like I already told you guys that this is a common thing that you get from people. I'll tell them, I tell those people, like, yeah, this is exactly what we were told about Sunnis.
Yes. The very last one. From my side here, the Shia sect was created by, well, supposedly, this guy thinks it's a fact. The Shia sect was created by a Jew called Ibn Saba. What does Armin think of this?
Well, we heard exactly about the Sunni thing also being a Jewish conspiracy too. It's just everything, yeah. But the interesting thing is actually that, as Ali Rizvi points out, Islam but all of it is, you have a lot of conspiracy theories, but some conspiracies are true. For example, 9/11 was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy by Al-Qaeda, right? And Islam is also not only a conspiracy, Islam is a Jewish conspiracy, right? Because Muhammad was copying the Jewish doctrine, like that was his go-to doctrine to build a new religion out of it, if any of this is true, if any of these stories are true. So Shia says Sunnis and Baha'is and Ahmadis and everyone else is a Jewish conspiracy. Sunnis say Shias are a Jewish, or Iranians also used to say the British conspiracy as well. But everything apparently that they don't like is a Jewish conspiracy. But the interesting thing is that Islam is actually a Jewish conspiracy. Both of them are Jewish conspiracy.
Indeed. Anything else from your side, Stops? I mean, we could chat for hours, but I know you've got to be there.
No, let's do it. All I'd like to do is Khairiya Mamnoon, Mucha Karam, and just say thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on. Hopefully we'd love to have you again. So thanks for coming on, sharing some things, and all the best. Good luck. We'll share everything that I come across on Facebook. So more great videos. I think that's the sort of thing that'll go viral. The challenging the beliefs, getting out there with a video. That's where I think you'll reach the people when you're out in the streets and doing that. So good luck. Stay safe, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the people in the live chat. I see Beaches here. Beaches Awesome, Tanvir, Scientific Method, Doorknob Head, everyone, Jon Snow, Unmoved Mover. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your questions.
And by the way, if you ever need help, if you need some voices, if you need some sounding boards or something, please feel free to come any Friday, come talk to us, or if you need, just hit us up. We're always happy to help if you need something, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you indeed as well. Thanks so much, Armin.
All right, thank you. Right.
Okay, so what I have now is just some crazy comments, and that's basically it.
Are we? It shows live for me. Are we still live?
No. We're still live. We'll still continue on a little bit. We just didn't want to take you for so long because.
Oh, okay, so I just hang up now, right?
Yes. Indeed.
Thanks,
Thanks so much,
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
Awesome. That was brilliant. It's always wonderful to have somebody that, is making a name out there and getting the message out and sharing a perspective, that's what it's all about. Okay. Indeed. So.
Okay, then let's run through a couple of crazy comments. Or if anybody wants to ask any other questions, then we can, I don't know, if you want to talk about
we can carry on for a little while.
Now.
Somebody wants to join, and especially if you're a Muslim, you want to join and you want to say anything about what's happened there or anything else, then somebody can join. I've got another ex-Muslim who wanted to join for a short while, so if you've got the time, you want to stop. So if you want to close it off, you're in charge tonight. Okay,
let's just quickly run through these and then see where this takes us. This is a quickie, not so many. So this is you're an atheist. Do you have scientific evidence that God does not exist? So this thing is still running around, and I don't understand it.
I would now say the Quran is scientific evidence against God, given the claims that Muslims make. So that's what I would now say.
Very true. Okay, this one, I don't know, I need to zoom this a little bit. This is from you, I think.
Where is it? I don't think so.
With this guy? Oh, was it me? Okay, so then this guy was on Facebook and he said, this is absolutely amazing. Bless you abundantly. Somebody like Bernard Long, who is an atheist living in the world of illusion, is not searching for the truth. The admin should handle his case. This is what you get if you go to a Muslim discussion group. So then I said, an atheist living in the world is the admin. Should you judge me? Should a Muslim invite in the way of your Lord with wisdom and good advice and debate, investment and further? Do you have no opinion or points and are so poor you need censorship? How do you expect people to learn about Islam and its application today if people like you shut the doors to all communication and all that is left is Fox News? And then you complain that people like me should ask Muslims about Islam and then slam the door in my face. Is that what a real Muslim should do? Because they don't realize, that by complaining about non-Muslims, they're saying, well, you need to ask a Muslim if you want to learn about Islam. And then we do exactly that. And then they say, well, you're an asshole for doing that. They need to be censored.
Yeah, well, stop. You've got to do it in such a placating manner that it sounds like you're licking their boots or something. If you do it in any sort of blunt or forthright manner, well, then you're attacking Islam. You're not critiquing. You're attacking it. The thin-skinned version. I like your. I've read this already.
This I can skip.
Yeah.
Okay, this was about tan. I don't even understand why tan draws so much ire, so much. I don't know why people are so polarized by tan. I don't understand that. I, I don't know, maybe I'm different or something. So Tan's behavior was appalling when he stated that he ejaculated on the Quran. It was unwarranted, provocative, confrontational, and deeply offensive. Yes, you stupid idiot, that's the whole point.
Well, I know this guy actually, Stops. So before you continue, he's a big African American guy that comes down. He used to be a Muslim. He's now not a Muslim, so presumably an ex-Muslim, and he's quite critical of Islam. So it's interesting that he's making that comment.
Okay, and I don't care if what somebody is. I care what people are saying, and for me, this is stupid. Especially now, it's the typical free speech. Yes, but. And this but is what.
Well, I think he's wrong. Obviously, with a fire. I mean, this is still used with. I would encourage people to go look into this. This has been the original case, and also this accompanying phrase was overturned in the Supreme Court in the mid-70s. So this whole thing of shouting fire is not, in fact, against free speech or So it's now widely agreed by people that have looked into this a little more deeply, and I agree with them that shouting fire is not against free speech, or it doesn't constitute something that should be banned. So it's just a phrase that people still use because it was a phrase used by a justice way back when they were doing a trial, and he was trying some people who were accused of communism in the whatever time it was, the 50s or whatever it was,
distributing pamphlets.
Yes. So the example. Some of the viewers might not. Yeah. And his defense asked, well, what would constitute something against free speech? And his response was shouting fire in a crowded theater. Obviously, this was one of his most infamous sayings, and unfortunately, it's haunted him ever since. And of course, with a little bit of careful thought, one can see that that's in fact a very poor example. And of course, you can shout fire in a crowded theater.
But this is something I need to, again, I don't know why I need to repeat all these things. Having the right to shout fire in a theater does not compel you to shout fire in the theater. It's the same way as giving women the right to have an abortion does not force them to do so. And this is the thing that I always need to stress to people. I don't know why I always need to say this. Just because you have the right, you don't need to do it. You also have the right not to say this. And this is
I guess somebody who might respond to you and go, well, the moment you give people the right, there's always going to be somebody who's going to use it. So the fact that most people wouldn't do it is great, but there's always going to be people who would do it.
Okay, so the next one is Tan once again. So Tan, and okay, this is true, okay, by the way, all right? Here I agree with the guy. So it's not only that I bring like only stupid things, but I must admit I agree with this. Tan is welcome to say as he pleases on this thing, But other speakers who join the discussion are basically told to monitor the words expressed, yet initially were invited to vent their frustrations. Also, before that, you were speaking about how people have a lot to say in the comments, but when asked to come, they're not on it. Now, this is criticism directed at Kalam and a hangout that he had where he invited Tan. And it is correct that he first played Tan and he did not restrict Tan in any way. And we all know, I mean, if you go to Tan's website, you can read his manifesto. Sorry, I'm getting drunk on water. So then he very clearly uses any and every expletive that is available in the English language. And Kalam does not restrict Tan in any which way. But yet when people are on the show, he tells them, you're not allowed to swear, you're not allowed this, it's a family show, my mother is sitting opposite me. And that is double standards. So the guy carries on. How are you, for example, telling and reminding speakers other than Tan not to say anything that's going to get them kicked off? So others, other than Tan, must watch their mouth as though they're protecting the feelings of Tan, yet those he is offending must remain a puppet on your strings. Not permitted to go outside the confines of what you feel they can and can't say, whilst Tan, of whom you're obviously a fan, is free to say as he pleases. And this is, I agree with that. If we have free speech, we need to have free speech. You can't say Tan is allowed to have free speech and the others are not. And this doesn't work.
Yes, I would agree with that. Even if he's your main guest, if Armin came on here and we would let somebody say virtually anything apart from direct incitement. Well, I would anyway, apart from direct incitement of violence. So they can say nigger, or they could say Nazi, they could say whatever. And that's the other thing, by the way. This whole thing of you can't say the N word, and that's what they were doing on that particular show, or the show before that, or the N word. But then Tan comes on and says, "Hey, good night, my niggers," or whatever the case may be. I'll see you in Speaker's Corner, whatever the case is. So. Yeah, I think you do have to have the same standard. Either everybody can say these things or nobody can. But if you're going to, like you say, if you're going to allow the main speaker or the guest to do so, then you do need to allow the panelists to respond in the same way. Otherwise, it does look like it's favoritism.
Tan goes too far. If a Muslim spoke like that, we non-believers would be quite angry. No, that's exactly the point the point that I am trying to make. No. I do not believe in any kind of restriction. We can say whatever we want. We need to be strong enough. We need to have the Zen or whatever you want to call it. We need to have the strength. We need to have the robustness. And I think a democracy can handle things like that. And that
but even if you were angry,
this restriction.
Correct. But even if people did get angry, that's your that's your choice. And B, well, how long are you going to choose to feel angry? So, none of us are Buddhas. And, I'm sure even for myself and for you, there's something somebody might be able to say where there might be an emotional thought or a response from us. Because you're not a Buddha. But then my response is, okay, well, how long may you choose to? Because it's my choice. I chose to feel that way. This person, I can't control what they're going to say, but I can choose how I respond or feel towards it. And so even if somebody did, the difference is even if we felt really pissed off, which would be incredibly difficult to do, but if that were possible, I don't want to restrict them unless it's direct incitement to violence. Anything else, I've got to go, okay, how do I handle this better, rather than, okay, I'm angry, let me do something to prevent them from saying X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and even, there's a whole group. If I say Captain Kirk is an asshole, then there's a whole group of people who are all fans of Captain Kirk who are going to be offended, okay? And if I say Jesus is an asshole, there's another group of people who are going to be offended. But they are not going to come after me and kill me. And yet if I say Muhammad was an asshole, there's a whole group of people who now have murder in their eyes and all they want to do is kill me. And this is the difference.
Yeah, I think that's the crucial thing that people do forget, is that nowhere else would that be the case.
And this is so childish. 25 states here in the US have no minimum age for marriage. 257,000 minors were married in the past 15 years here in the US. Age of consent in all of England, North America was 10 100 years ago. And as far as Islam is not welcome, then get Christianity out of the Middle East and bring back the 2 or 4 million innocent men, women, and children murdered by the West. And what makes me really angry is that there were 35 people here who said, yep, this is great.
Yeah, well,
I cannot understand where this comes from.
It's the two-quay fallacy. What he's basically accepting is that, the age was okay in Islam. You or some didn't have that. Well, we can criticize those states for not having a minimum age, just like we would, criticize Muhammad for marrying a child. So, that doesn't wash with me or anybody else. Well, it shouldn't wash with anybody else. We can still critique those states, but all he's tacitly admitting is that the same is true of Islam. But hey, you guys have got the same, so you can't throw sticks. Well, A, we don't live there, and B, even if I did live there, I would criticize it and still criticize Muhammad as well. So there you go.
And then this word that I hate so much, as soon as apologists use it, and that is the word innocent. Why put the word innocent in there? If 2 or 4 million people were killed, then it should be those men, women, and children, and not innocent. Putting the word innocent there is only trying to make it emotional. It serves no other purpose. Leave it out.
And how does he know they're all innocent? Could there not have been collaborators or enemy combatants within those people anyway? But again, it's just numbers there. And how many people have died under Islam after the last 1400 years? So, I've got some more crazy comments, but I'll save it for the next show. So I think that's good. Let me see if do you want to continue? If not, we can close it down. No problem.
Yeah, we can go to an after show. We can, because we've done 2 hours, and I think that's a good time. Because I hate this now. Everybody's having these 5, 6 hours. Come on, I don't have time for that.
Okay, so so there
Rob,
you
are
heard
you
it.
on Facebook? Yes, you're on Facebook. Come on, who has been on the show a couple of days and doesn't know that we are now both on Facebook? You have been on Facebook for ages. I started like 3 weeks ago.
So okay, so Stops has spoken. Yes, we'll go to an after show. So if you want to join an after show, if you're a friend with me on Facebook already, just drop me a message. If you are not, please email me or Stops. You can email me at speakerscorneruk@gmail.com. I will not put the link into the main chat because that way we allow trolls in and they can affect the after show. So if you wish to join the after show, email me speakerscorneruk@gmail.com or send me a message on Facebook, or you can send Bernard Long a message, which is Stops, and we can then bring you into the after show. That way, you know, if you're a troll or you misbehave, we can eject you and you can't affect the after show. So with that said, Stops, have you got a hadith of the day? We will go to an after show, and there's a couple of requests to join, so we can add those people.
Of course, I don't. As always, I'm totally
I actually had
disorganized.
one, but let me just see. Was it on my
You or me
phone?
was quicker.
What's this one here? Oh, here's a really short one. Actually, I saw this. This was an excellent.
I will close this again. And show me, by the way, if you are making an ethical judgment and are saying, no, we are not allowed to say what we want, then I will criticize you for that, okay?
Is that a comment in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So here is Hadith of the Day 11946, narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, snakes were transmuted jinn, just as monkeys and pigs were transmuted Israelites. Classed Sahih by Al-Albani. So there we go. Yeah. Snakes are transmuted jinn, just as monkeys and pigs were transmuted Israelites.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. I've put the link in the...
Well, we didn't really want the link in there, Stop, so I don't know if you want to just remove...
No, that's fine. Because
okay.
I'm gonna stop the broadcast now. We're going to go to the after show, so it's not going to be live. See you next time.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good night.
And if you can, quickly click on thumbs up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.